The road to St. Francisville was a ribbon of cracked asphalt flanked by ancient live oaks, their Spanish moss draping like spectral shrouds. As dusk bled into night, the Myrtles Plantation emerged from the gloom, its white columns and shuttered windows half hidden by twisting vines. Visitors speak of a hush here, as though the very air holds its breath. Marcus and Elise Thornton arrived at the wrought iron gate just as the last rays of sunset flickered away. The gravel crunched beneath their tires, announcing their arrival to a house built in 1796. Legends whispered that it stood upon Maurepas' cursed soil, cursed first by Choctaw blood, then by the sorrows of every family that called it home. They crossed the lawn, drawn to the grand facade. The wide porch sagged under the weight of centuries, paint peeling like the skin of a dying thing. Elise hesitated by the front door, a heavy oak bolted from within. As Marcus knocked, a sudden gust rattled the shutters and carried a faint, childlike giggle across the entrance. "Probably just the wind," Marcus said, sliding the key into the lock. But Elise's skin pricked with dread. Once inside, the foyer stretched before them with its gleaming heart pine floors and ornate chandelier, still intact despite the house's neglect. Yet the air was thick, tinged with damp rot and something else, like old blood. Elise wrapped her arms around herself as Marcus flipped on a lamp. Its warm glow revealed portraits lining the walls, ancestors in powdered wigs whose painted eyes seemed to follow every step. They set up their equipment, audio recorders on the staircase, night vision cameras pointed at the parlor doors, and a single candle perched on the grand piano. Elise traced her fingertip over the piano's keys. A single note, low and discordant, echoed through the hall, though no hand had touched the ivory. She jumped back. Marcus rushed over, whispering, "It's just unsettled strings." They climbed to the second floor, where the Thornton family would sleep. The hallway was lined with bedrooms once occupied by owners, overseers, and the enslaved souls who worked the cotton fields. Outside one door, Elise spotted muddy footprints tracking across the polished wood, tiny, barefoot prints, as though a child had tiptoed by. The prints ended at the threshold of room 5, the old nursery. In the dim doorway, a small rocking chair swayed gently. No breeze stirred the drapes. Inside, a cracked porcelain doll lay face down on the bed. As they watched, its head rolled upright, glass eyes locking onto Elise. Her breath hitched. Marcus reached to calm her, but the door slammed shut of its own accord. Elise fumbled with the handle. It wouldn't budge. Behind her, footsteps padded across the hallway, soft, shuffling, coming closer. She peered through the keyhole and saw a shadow pass by. A little girl in a torn dress, hair matted, skin as pale as moonlight. She lifted a hand and tapped lightly on the door. Marcus caught up, pressing his body against hers. "Don't let her in," he whispered. The taps grew louder. Tap, tap, tap. Insistent. Elise grabbed her recorder and held it to the door. On playback, they would hear a whisper, "Play with me." Finally, the taps stopped. They backed away, hearts pounding, and found the window ajar, its sash cut through, as if torn by desperate hands. As Elise pushed it closed, a single red rose petal drifted inside, landing at her feet. No bouquet lay nearby. The petals came from unknown gardens. They fled back downstairs, intent on writing off the night's events as tricks of the mind, until they reached the foyer. There, scrawled in crimson across the whitewashed walls, were the words, "Stay forever." The letters trembled, as though freshly painted with a shaking hand. Marcus grabbed Elise's arm. "We're leaving. Now!" Outside, the night wind whipped their jackets as they sprinted to their car. From the front windows, the mansion's dark silhouette watched them go. In the lingering hush, Elise was certain she heard the faint creak of a rocking chair and a last, sorrowful lullaby drifting on the breeze. They barely caught their breaths as they sped away, taillights receding into the blackness. But neither Marcus nor Elise felt safe. The Myrtles' phantom invitation, stay forever, seared itself into their minds. Back at their motel, they researched furiously. The plantation's history unfolded like a nightmare. Originally a Choctaw hunting ground, it became a thriving cotton estate under General David Bradford in 1796. Over the next century, at least 5 families called it home, each touched by tragedy. Deadly yellow fever outbreaks, mysterious drownings in the tree-lined canal, and a basement fire that claimed 2 children in 1871. Most chilling was the tale of Chloe, the young slave girl owned by Judge Isaac Woodruff. Legend held that Chloe was forced to wear a green turban after stealing and eating a slice of birthday cake meant for Woodruff's daughter. When she refused to reveal her accomplices, the judge hanged her from an oak tree on the front lawn. Her body was buried in the yard, and her spirit, driven by resentment, reportedly cursed every subsequent resident. Determined to confront the heart of the curse, Marcus and Elise returned that night with purpose. They carried a small shovel, armed with salt, and placed cameras at key points: the burial oak, the nursery, and the canal's edge. Rain pelted the empty fields as they climbed the mansion's steps, candlelight flickering in the windows like distant eyes. Their first stop was the oak. The air around the ancient trunk felt oppressively heavy. Elise drew a circle of salt at its base and sprinkled handfuls on the damp ground. A sudden gust tore through the branches, showering them with wet moss. In the camera's night vision, a shape coalesced against the bark. A girl in a tattered dress, head wrapped in a green cloth. Her eyes shimmered with wrath as she raised a hand, and then dissolved into motes of mist. They fled under the oak's looming limbs and sprinted toward the nursery window, where the rocking chair sat still. Marcus pushed inside. Elise held the candle. The air was frigid. On the dusty floor lay dozens of withered rose petals, each the deep red of dried blood. At the piano, their earlier candle had reignited itself, its flame jerking wildly. A soft crying echoed from the corridor, a child's lament. They followed it to the parlor, where the grand piano keys pressed themselves one by one, playing a broken lullaby. Startled, Elise stumbled backward and yanked the candle. It extinguished in her grasp. In the sudden darkness, the crying intensified, then morphed into a whisper. "Mine. Mine." Marcus shone his flashlight at the fireplace's hearth. There, scratched into the blackened bricks, were the letters, Chloe, each gouge deep and fresh. He knelt, fingers tracing the name, and felt a pulse in the stone, as though it were a beating heart. A crash behind them snapped their heads around. The front doors slammed shut, and windows all along the facade shattered in sync. Rainwater surged through the gaps, pooling at their feet. Shadows flickered at the edges of their lights. "We have to end this," Elise gasped. She recalled an old account, a ritual of absolution, burning a symbolic item and reciting Chloe's name with compassion rather than condemnation. Marcus rummaged through his coat and found a small vial of salt, an offering, and pulled out a scrap of green cloth from his pocket. It was a piece of Elise's scarf, unwittingly echoing Chloe's turban. They knelt on the soggy floor and placed the cloth atop the hearth. Marcus whispered softly, "Chloe, we honor your pain. You are more than a curse." Elise sprinkled salt over the cloth, then struck a match. Together they recited, "Spirit of the Myrtles, bound by injustice, we acknowledge your sorrow, we free your name. By flame and salt, we honor your truth, no longer chained by suffering's claim." Flames leapt from the cloth, white and hot in the hearth. The crying ceased. Every shutter slammed open in unison, and a windstorm whirled through the parlor, extinguishing their flashlights and candles. In the electric darkness, they felt gentle pressure at their backs, guiding them toward the door. Then, as abruptly as it began, the wind dropped, Lightning split the sky, and for a heartbeat the parlor was illuminated. The nursery door stood open, and in its threshold floated a small girl, no longer gaunt or vengeful, but dressed in a clean white gown, hands folded. Her eyes, once dark hollows, glowed with serene light. She nodded once, a faint smile on her lips, and then faded into the soft summer rain. Marcus and Elise bolted outside. The shattered windows now lay still. The porch was littered with broken glass, but the air felt lighter, as if a great weight had lifted. They looked back once more. Through the parlor window, the green-turbaned phantom of Chloe appeared, standing beside the oak. But her stance was gentle, almost grateful. Then she turned and drifted away into the sprawling shadows beyond the live oaks. They drove away in silence. The heavy hush that once cloaked the Myrtles Plantation felt gone, replaced by an almost sacred calm. Though the mansion still stood, its secrets etched into weathered timbers, the curse was broken that night. Yet travelers claim that on misty evenings, if you pause beneath the burial oak and place your hand upon its trunk, you can still feel a heartbeat and hear a distant, grateful whisper, "Thank you."